Looking at Jason, Feng Ye's eyes narrowed. As a mentor who has taught Jason for more than 2 years, Feng Ye can be said to know Jason quite well, but for some reason, looking at Feng Danyunqing at this moment as Jason walked towards the spirit test stone, Feng Ye couldn't help but feel that he couldn't see through Jason in front of him. The Jason in front of him seemed a little different from what he had been a few days ago. From this moment on, Feng Ye actually felt a slight oppression. This oppression was not caused by Jason's strength, but by Jason's way of seeing everything around him as invisible and looking down upon everything. What you feel in your eyes? Shaking his head gently secretly, Feng Ye took a look at the expressions of those around him. The expressions looking at Jason were full of disdain and ridicule. While Feng Ye was slightly angry, he couldn't help but wonder if he was a little sensitive. Maybe it's just an illusion. Except for a very small number of people, the eyes of most of the surrounding students, including Stowe, all drifted away to other places after Jason stepped onto the stage, where many people gathered in small groups and whispered. In the past 2 years of evaluation, Jason's spiritual power test has always stayed at the 5th level of spiritual power. In the minds of these people, the result of Jason's spiritual power test this time will also be the same. What they are concerned about the question was who Jason had previously chosen to challenge. Presumably, he would have chosen the weakest person in the class. I am afraid that only in this way could he win. But no matter what the result of the challenge is, Jason will still fail the final assessment. The fact that he has not been promoted to a level for more than 2 years will make Jason the first person to be kicked out of the 6th Spiritual Power Academy. Students. Jason walked up to the spiritual test stone, and the 6th level spiritual power in his body quickly accelerated in his meridians, condensing towards Jason's right fist with a unique frequency. This method of gathering strength was learned by Jason from a 9th level Holy Spirit Master in his previous life, and it can greatly bring out the spiritual power in the Spirit Master's body. Bang! His right fist was suddenly swung out in an instant, and a huge explosion sounded in the center of the venue, focusing everyone's attention on Jason, who was standing in front of the spirit test stone. Full of energy, and full of spiritual power. Under the surprised eyes of everyone in the audience, Jason slowly retracted his right fist, and a deep hole clearly appeared on the spirit test stone, impressing everyone's eyes. Feng Ye took a fierce step forward, with a hint of joy that was hard to detect in his uncertain expression. He was so powerful and powerful. This is impossible. Who can tell me that the punch just now was really thrown by Jason, who is known as the best loser in the academy? Well, the punch that Jason punched before should be more than the 5th level of spiritual power, right? Many students murmured to themselves in disbelief. What remained in their minds was the powerful punch Jason had thrown earlier. Feng Ye quickly took 2 steps forward and looked at the hole made by Jason. His heart was shocked. The hole made by Jason was as big as a person's head. The bottom was as smooth as a mirror, not as smooth as a mirror. Like most people, what they hit is a punch mark, and there will be irregular pits formed by the knuckles at the bottom. What surprised Feng Ye even more was that the spiritual shock caused by Jason's previous punch seemed to have cut off the contact between the spiritual stone and the spiritual power in the air. It took a long time for the hole formed to slow down. Recover slowly. What kind of boxing skill is this? It's terrible. Jason, 17 years old, spiritual power level 6, promoted. Feng Ye looked around the audience, and his voice rose unconsciously and reached the ears of everyone in the audience. In the deathly silence, everyone stared at Jason standing there calmly. The unexpected ending made everyone unable to recover for a while. They had imagined today's scene countless times, but no one could have imagined that it would end like this. Jason, who had never been promoted in more than 2 years, actually made the cut in his last assessment. Teacher Feng Ye, since the assessment is over and I have something to do, I have to go out to the academy for a while, so I will leave first. Also, please change the level on my identity record to level 6 as soon as possible. Facing tutor Feng Ye and standing next to Luo Yi, Jason nodded slightly and walked towards the outside of the martial arts training ground. He still had some very important things to do, but he didn't have much free time to stay here. Amid all the astonished gazes, Jason's back slowly disappeared at the end of the martial arts training ground. Okay, no need to read any more, let's continue the test. Feng Yi, who came back to his senses, immediately called on his students to continue the test. At the same time, he said to Stowe with a smile on his face, "Teacher Stowe, just continue to stand there and watch, let the students in your class learn from my students, I don't mind, haha." Feng Yi's hearty laughter spread far and wide in the martial arts training ground. Isn't it just that he has been promoted? Even if he reaches the 6th level of spiritual power, Jason is still a loser. Let's go back. Stowe said with a livid face, snorted coldly, turned around and walked towards the place where his class was tested. Is the student I like so bad? Faced with Instructor Stowe's provocative words, Instructor Feng Yi only had a gentle smile on his face without any rebuttal. From Jason's face full of confidence and perseverance before, Feng Yi discovered that Jason, who was once known as the genius of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, seemed to be back. Feng Yi pinched his pocket. Inside, a book called Basic Spiritual Power Exercise lay quietly there. Originally, Feng Yi planned to condense his efforts into this book if Jason failed the test. The notes were given to him secretly, but now, it seems that they are no longer needed at all. Where are the Jasons? Just as Feng Yi continued to test a few students, an anxious and melodious voice reached the ears of everyone present. A red figure passed by, like a butterfly fluttering past, and a figure appeared in front of Feng Yi the next moment. "Teacher Klein, why are you here?" After seeing the person in front of him, Teacher Feng Yi immediately asked with a hint of surprise on his face. The person who appeared in front of everyone was Klein, the 3rd-level low-level elixir master who taught Jason the art of elixir. "Feng Yi, where are the Jasons?" Klein's eyes hurriedly passed through the crowd. After making sure that he had not found the Jasons, he immediately asked Feng Yi. "Jason? He's gone? Mr. Klein, do you have anything to do with him? Jason may have left the academy now." "What? Jason is gone, he's already out of the academy? Isn't that right, Teacher Feng Yi, you actually?" After hearing Feng Yi's words, Klein immediately looked at Feng Yi with eyes full of anger, and was so angry that he didn't know what to say. Yesterday, after seeing the fire element base liquid prepared by Jason using his unique skills, Klein was full of curiosity about Jason's preparation method. However, Jason disappeared immediately after preparing the fire element basic liquid yesterday, which made Klein very depressed after class. As Jason's teacher, Klein naturally knew that Jason would be expelled from the Sith Spiritual Power Academy as long as he failed today's assessment. She was so anxious that she delayed some time because of one thing this morning. When he arrived at the martial arts training ground, he actually learned from Feng Yi, who was testing Jason, that Jason had left the academy. This made Klein almost vomit blood from depression. "Feng Yi, you actually persuaded students to dismiss without the consent of the college. Although theoretically this is Jason's last evaluation, I tell you that I have already evaluated Jason in advance. The result is excellent, Teacher Feng Yi, you must be responsible for your reckless behavior." Klein calmed down and looked at Feng Yi coldly on his face. Teacher Klein, who said that Jason was persuaded to quit by me?" Feng Yi said in confusion. "Jason has been promoted. He completed the test in advance and has already gone out." "Huh?" Teacher Lane was dumbfounded. Broccoli walking slowly on the campus of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, Jason was thinking silently about the things he would need to buy later. After thinking about it all day yesterday, Jason now has a general outline in his mind about the path he will take in the future, the most important of which is to improve his physical strength. Jason, who was born in the era when the spiritual master system was extremely perfect 3,000 years later, clearly understood how much influence a spiritual master's physical strength had on his practice. In this world, all spiritual masters do not pay much attention to physical strength training. After all, in the spiritual master's practice, with each level of improvement and the transformation and nourishment of spiritual power, the physical strength of the spiritual master will be improved. With certain improvement, such physical strength is enough to allow him to skillfully and freely use the spiritual power in his body in battle or practice without being unable to bear it. Therefore, in this era, there is no spiritual master who specializes in improving one's physical strength. After all, no matter how one improves one's physical strength, it is not as practical as improving one level in spiritual power level. But 2,000 years later, the emergence of a school of spiritual masters named violent spiritual masters completely overturned this tradition, and even almost broke the division of spiritual power levels in the spiritual master world. Most of them not only can people leapfrog and challenge people of a higher level than themselves in the same level, there are even some genius-like figures who can leapfrog and challenge spiritual masters of a higher level than themselves. His most famous battle was when the founder of his sect, when he was only a 7th-level imperial spiritual master, used his strong physical strength and unique skills to defeat a 9th-level Holy Spirit master. And famous all over the world. In his previous life, Jason had a very close personal relationship with the founder of the 5th-generation sect of violent spiritual masters and had a thorough understanding of all the training methods of this sect. Jason's own body training method in his previous life was based on the violent spiritual master. The training methods of the spiritual master school have been summarized and improved. Therefore, whether it is for the cultivation of his spiritual medicine master or the cultivation of a spiritual master, Jason must restore his body strength to the level of his previous life as soon as possible, or even better than his previous life. Master Saha. Master. Just when Jason was thinking about walking to the entrance of the academy, respectful voices suddenly came into his ears. Jason looked up and saw only one person. The old man in a gray robe was slowly walking into the gate of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. After seeing the old man, both the gatekeepers of the college and some teachers in the college stood aside with respectful faces and lowered their heads. Among them, 2 teachers with some status said softly, "Hello, don't dare to say more words." As the president of Talon City's Elixir Medicine Union, President Saha is the only one in Talon City who is a 4th-level intermediate elixir master like Dean Bispham of his college. The teachers in the entire college are full of incomparable feelings for him. Of reverence. 4th-level elixir master? After walking past the old man, Jason couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. In his previous life, he was a 9th-level elixir master, and he could tell from the posture of the old man's hands at a glance. It turns out that he is a spiritual medicine master. When Jason passed by President Saha before, he smelled an extremely subtle smell of spirit control liquid from President Saha. As a 4th-level basic medicine, the spirit control liquid needs to be at least level 4. Only low-level elixir masters can master it. Combined with the demeanor and tone of the surrounding college teachers, Jason could tell at once that the old man next to him, who was respectfully called Master Saha, was a 4th-level spiritual master. Medicine master. Look, isn't that Jason? The first student in our college to be expelled. After seeing Jason at the door, a student couldn't help but shout in a low voice. Drop out of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy? After hearing what the student not far away said, Saha, who had been walking forward as if nothing happened, couldn't help but pause, turned around and glanced at Jason, who had already walked out of the academy gate. Knowing the rules of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, he couldn't help but murmured softly, "Children today don't know how to work hard. If he doesn't know how to make progress, he may become a first-order person in this life. It's even harder to be a disciple of elixir." Shaking his head slightly, President Saha turned and walked towards the dean's office of the college. This time he wanted to make a good mockery of his good friend Bispham. See if he can still not to mention that he was fanciful. When he thought of this, Saha couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. "JS, where is this master now? It would be troublesome if he had left Talon City." Saha frowned, patted his head in distress, and walked towards the courtyard of the academy at a faster pace. Long room. Now, he only wants to find the JS that solved his problem. Jason, who had not yet realized that he had become a mysterious figure in the Talon City Spiritualist Guild, walked towards the Talon City Spiritualist Guild after leaving the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Generally, in every city, there will be a relatively large trading market, and most of these trading markets are located in the Stern Continent. Although the elixir is the most noble profession, as the most common profession in the mainland, the Spiritual Master, the gathering of Spiritual Masters unions, is the most prosperous place in a city, so most of the city's shops are built near the Spiritual Masters Union. Jason slowly shuttled through the city, and after a while, he already had a lot of materials in his hand. Broccoli, etc., these are relatively common and basic medicinal materials and plants on the mainland. You can buy these things in many places as long as you spend some money. Now Jason, the only thing missing is the spiritual core of a first-level fiery tiger beast. In the body-strengthening potion that Jason wants to prepare, the spiritual core of the fiery tiger beast as the main medicine cannot be replaced. In fact, the spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast cannot be replaced. Although the core is a very precious thing in Stern Continent, the value of the first-order spiritual core is not too high. It's just that in Jason's previous life, the fierce tiger beast was a very rare spiritual beast. The number of fierce tiger beasts on the mainland is quite rare, so it is difficult to find them, and the spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast that Jason obtained was something that he finally found after a lot of effort. Just when Jason was looking around, on a stall not far ahead, a dark green fruit-like thing suddenly caught Jason's eyes, attracting him firmly. Then, isn't that the Tiangsan Huang fruit that is extinct on the mainland? After taking a closer look at the dark green fruit, Jason's eyes almost popped out of his head, and he murmured in surprise. Although the name of Tianqin Huanghua sounds extremely domineering, it is actually a lower-level spiritual fruit with a very sweet taste. Because its juice has a very powerful protective effect on the human body, it can gently nourish all kinds of diseases in the human body. Tendon and muscle tissue, so it is often added as an additive to various trauma treatment agents. Although the Tianqin Emperor fruit is of a lower level and its value is not greater than those of higher-level spiritual fruits, in the world of Jason's previous life, this fruit that nourishes the body has long been extinct on the mainland, except for beyond some hidden mountains and deep jungles, no trace can be found. In his previous life, after Jason became a 9th-level elixir master, in order to prepare an extremely powerful body-refining potion, he needed to find some materials to send a message on the mainland, one of which was the Tianqin Emperor fruit. With Jason's prestige and strength, within a short time, some big families and powerful people who owned some of the materials sent those materials to Jason in order to establish a relationship with Jason. Only this Tianqin Emperor fruit, Jason didn't collect it until the end. Therefore, it is no wonder that Jason was very surprised when he saw such a Tiangsan Huang fruit on a street stall in a small city like Talon City. When something that you have been searching for but cannot find finally appears in front of you in such an inadvertent way, it often gives people not only joy but also surprise. Could it be that the stall owner accidentally got this fruit and didn't know its value? After a quick thought, Jason came to the stall the next moment and started looking at other things on the stall. Come, give people the feeling of just taking a look. After seeing Jason, the stall owner probably felt that a child of Jason's age did not look like a big seller, so he just opened his slightly narrowed eyes a little. How to sell the spirit fruit? After a while, Jason's right hand turned over to the Tianqin Emperor fruit and asked in a rather casual tone. This Tianqin Emperor fruit? The stall owner glanced at Jason in front of him, paused slightly, and said calmly, 200 spirit coins. 200 spirit coins? Jason was slightly startled. The Tianqin Emperor fruit, which was regarded as a priceless treasure in his previous life, only cost 200 spirit coins. This made Jason feel deeply shocked. You know, this was something that even a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life could do. An extinct spiritual fruit that is hard to find. Moreover, this Tiangsan Wing fruit is very important to Jason, who is now preparing to prepare the bodybuilding spiritual liquid. If he can add the Tiangsan Wing fruit to the bodybuilding spiritual liquid he is about to prepare, Jason's body, the intensity and speed of your exercise will get a qualitative leap. Gently taking out the spirit card on his body, Jason still had about 1,000 spirit coins in the spirit card. The price of 200 spirit coins was completely acceptable. After seeing Jason's actions, the stall owner couldn't help but froze. Obviously, he had not thought that Jason would really buy the Tianqin Emperor fruit. The previous price was just a price he quoted at random, but unexpectedly, the young man in front of me really wanted to spend 200 spirit coins to buy this Tiangsan Wing fruit. A hint of imperceptible joy quickly flashed across the stall owner's eyes. "Boss, it's too expensive to sell such a Tianqin Emperor fruit for 200 spirit coins." Just when Jason was about to say something to buy it, a voice suddenly came from behind Jason, and then, a figure stopped beside Jason, looking at Jason with a kind smile. "Who are you?" Stopping next to Jason was a young man about 20 years old, wearing a blue-gray robe that was somewhat similar to the elixir robe worn by an elixir, and on the left side of the chest of his robe in the position, there is an embroidery of the emblem of the Medicine Master Guild engraved on it. Looking at the young man in front of him, Jason felt that he looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. "Junior Jason, my name is Xiaobo, and I am also a student of the Spiritual Medicine Department of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Maybe you have never seen me before, but I know you." Xiaobo smiled at Jason and then turned his head. He said to the stall owner, 50 spirit coins, this Tiangsan Wing fruit belongs to us." Xiaobo had just finished his morning work at the Spiritual Medicine Master Guild. Because he needed to buy some materials, he didn't even change into his work clothes. When I arrived at the market in Talon City, I happened to meet Jason, who wanted to buy the Tiangsan Wing fruit. Jason was a famous figure in the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Xiaobo had met him several times in the open classes of the Spiritual Medicine Department. Therefore, after seeing that Jason was about to be slaughtered, he immediately started to bargain for Jason. "Brother, 50 spirit coins are too little. Let's see if you can add some more." Seeing that he was about to make a big profit, he didn't expect that Qing Yao Jin would suddenly come out halfway, and the price it just happened to be in line with my own psychological price. Looking at Xiaobo in front of him, the stall owner wanted to scold him, but when he saw the robe that Xiaobo was wearing engraved with the emblem of the Medicine Master Guild, the stall owner didn't dare to be too presumptuous even though he felt unhappy. An elixir master working in the Elixir Masters Union was not something a first-level spiritual disciple like himself could offend. 50 spirit coins, this price is already very good. If you don't sell it, we will have to buy it elsewhere. The Tianqin Emperor fruit is not a particularly rare thing. Xiaobo still had a faint expression on his face. He looked at the stall owner with a smile. He often worked in the Spiritual Medicine Masters Guild and knew the prices of these spiritual fruits. Okay, I see you are so sincere, so I'll sell it to you for just 50 spirit coins." The stall owner wrapped up the Tiangsan Wing fruit with a heartbroken expression and handed it over. "I'm telling you, brother, what I did this time was a loss-making business. I really lost money. Alas, business is not easy to do. Pay the money, Junior Jason." Xiaobo looked at Jason and said, "If you want to buy any materials in the future, you can come to me. I help work in the Elixir Masters Union. I dare not say anything else about potions and spiritual fruits. I know the price quite clearly." Feeling Xiaobo's passionate gaze, Jason paid the money speechlessly, as if he was not very familiar with him, and Xiaobo's was too enthusiastic. "Come on. By the way, do you know where I can buy the spirit core of the fierce tiger beast?" After putting the Tianqin Emperor fruit away, Jason asked immediately after hearing that Xiaobo was working in the Spiritual Medicine Master Guild. "The spirit core of the fierce tiger beast?" Xiaobo frowned slightly. "Why do you want this?" The spirit core of the fierce tiger beast should be sold in some professional spiritual core stores, but I have one now. The spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast king was exchanged for a bottle of basic potion last time. If you want it, I can sell it to you for 500 spirit coins. The spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast king only costs 500 spirit coins. Suddenly a flash of light flashed in Jason's mind. By the way, he was 3,000 years ago, not in his previous life. 3,000 years ago, the fierce tiger beast was not such a rare spiritual beast, and the Tiangsan wing fruit was not endangered due to human activities. There were also many animals, plants, and minerals that were extremely rare in later generations. However, on the current continent, they are not just common species found everywhere. What a wonderful life! In front of Xiaobo, Jason, the 9th level elixir master who was the first person in the mainland in his previous life, looked like a happy pig brother. Staring at the pile of materials in front of him, after taking a few deep breaths, Jason's eyes became clear. Being able to buy the spirit core of the fierce tiger beast king from Xiaobo for 500 spirit coins was a complete surprise for Jason. As the main medicine of the bodybuilding spirit liquid, the quality of the spirit core of the fierce tiger beast directly affects the grade of the entire potion. Using the spiritual core of the 2nd level fierce tiger beast king, the king of the fierce tiger beast group, as the main medicine, it is definitely a qualitative improvement in terms of the quality of the bodybuilding spirit liquid. After purchasing the spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast king from Xiaobo, Jason returned to the academy immediately after purchasing all the materials. After lunch, without any rest, he went directly to the experiment of the elixir department of the academy. In the room, after paying a certain fee from the teacher on duty, Jason selected some basic medicines in the laboratory's pharmacy room, and then walked into the private laboratory of his choice. In the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, students in the elixir department can use the instruments and basic potions in the academy's laboratory as long as they register during normal times. In order to facilitate some students who want to make elixirs during normal times, the academy, and also stipulates that as long as you pay a certain fee, you can use the private laboratory established by the college specifically for students to prepare pharmaceuticals. In such a private laboratory, the college is equipped with basic instruments and pharmaceuticals for the preparation of elixirs, and if students encounter any problems during the preparation process, they can also consult teachers who are on duty in the laboratory. In the quiet room, Jason picked up the broccoli with his right hand and narrowed his eyes slightly. After a moment, he breathed out gently and turned his right hand. The next moment, the broccoli was thrown into a bowl in front of Jason. A blue liquid in an Erlenmeyer flask. Laugh. When the broccoli came into contact with the blue liquid, a thin stream of red smoke came out. The broccoli was dissolved in the blue liquid almost instantly, and the air in the entire laboratory, suddenly a very delicate orchid fragrance filled the air. Picking up a bolluol leaf with his right hand again, Jason's right hand suddenly grasped it, and the 6th level spiritual power in his body erupted in an instant. The bolluol leaf was destroyed by Jason's targeted and powerful spiritual power, instantly turned into a pile of fine powder, scattered from Jason's fingertips into the Erlenmeyer flask. After coming into contact with the blue liquid with a trace of red flock in the Erlenmeyer flask, the powder turned into powder suddenly resembled fireflies in the dark summer night, emitting cool fluorescence and scattered one after another. Onto the red flock, it is dotted like stars in the sky in the dark night. Next, Jason put the juice extracted from the Tiangsan wing fruit directly into the Erlenmeyer flask. The violent reaction caused a large number of bubbles to bubble up in the Erlenmeyer flask. Immediately, Jason picked up the juice on the experimental table. The last material was thrown into the Erlenmeyer flask with the 2nd level spirit core of the fierce tiger beast king. At the same time, Jason's spiritual consciousness was already involved in the reaction of the solution at the next moment. The huge energy reaction made Jason's not-so-powerful spiritual consciousness somewhat uncertain. He flipped his right hand fiercely, and after a moment of reaction, Jason suddenly moved the Erlenmeyer flask that was reacting on the experimental table. The high-frequency vibration caused Jason's right hand to turn into a phantom of nothingness. The next moment, a strange sight appeared on Jason's right hand. A long red snake with stars shining on its body is constantly twisting and rolling on Jason's right hand, and in the center of the long red snake, there is the spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast king as big as a fist. Every time it rolls, a ray of light of different colors will pass through the air, and at the same time, the spirit core of the fierce tiger beast king will also shrink in size. The whole process lasted for about half an hour. Due to the vigorous exercise, Jason's face and forehead were covered with a dense layer of fine beads of sweat. Being unable to withstand the violent vibration of Jason's right hand, the Erlenmeyer flask made of crystal stone in the college laboratory instantly shattered with a loud bang. In an instant, a gleam suddenly flashed in Jason's eyes, and a black phantom flew rapidly through the air. A moment later, in Jason's left hand, there was a medicine bottle filled with red liquid, flashing as bright as a ruby. Jason was breathing heavily. Wherever he looked, broken Erlenmeyer flask fragments were scattered all over the experimental table. His right hand was twitching and shaking due to the previous high-intensity exercise. The severe pain from the attack was continuously transmitted to Jason's brain through his right hand, causing Jason to frown and grin. His eyes were fixed on the bottle of red elixir on his left hand. With his powerful soul perception, Jason could clearly sense how much energy there was in the red liquid filled in this small bottle of elixir. The bodybuilding spirit liquid has finally been prepared successfully. He murmured softly, and the joy of success brought a rare smile to the face of this first man in the mainland in his previous life. But then Jason looked at his right hand that was still twitching with a wry smile. What he needed to do most now was to go to the college's infirmary to get his right hand treated. Bang! Just when Jason had just put away the bodybuilding spirit liquid on his left hand and was about to go to the college infirmary, the door of the laboratory was suddenly opened in an instant, and then a fiery red figure, quickly, he rushed into the laboratory and grabbed Jason's right hand. "Jason, now I've found you. Where did you go yesterday afternoon and this morning? Forget it, I don't care about that. I'm going to take you to see someone right now." It was she who entered the laboratory. The teacher of the elixir department of Sling Power Academy has been looking for Klein, the third-level low-level elixir master Jason had been looking for a long time. After finally finding Jason, she grabbed Jason's right hand and while talking, she dragged him out of the private laboratory door and into the hall of the elixir department laboratory of the college. A burst of unique fragrance unique to women penetrated Jason's nose in an instant. Being held by the hand of teacher Klein, who was admired by countless male teachers and male students in the college, Jason felt no sweet feeling in his heart at this moment. He just stared at his own eyes, with a painful expression on his face, and wailed with a twisted expression, "Teacher Klein, you be gentler, my hiss was, your grip hurts." There was a sudden silence in the laboratory hall where there were many people. Countless silent gazes, like ghosts in the dark night, fell silently on Klein and Jason in an instant. Everyone in the room stared dumbly at Jason and Klein, who were holding hands. They were collectively petrified, and there was silence in the entire laboratory hall. "Damn it!" Klein stopped his rushing steps after running far away from the laboratory of the spiritual medicine department of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. He held his red cheeks in his hands, feeling hot. Klein, who was only 23 years old and had never held the hand of another man, thought about how he had held Jason's hand like this in public. The key point was that Jason said that at an inappropriate time. The words made Klein feel filled with shyness and embarrassment. "Who told you to say that in the hall, just now?" Klein glared and looked at Jason, who was following him fiercely, his face full of anger. The white nose was slightly open because of anger, which reflected the delicate red lips underneath, full of alluring flavor. At this moment, she didn't look like a majestic teacher. Instead, she looked like an angry little girl. Thinking of the way those students who used their spare time to study elixirs looked at him in the laboratory hall, Klein felt the urge to slap Jason to death, and then die the same way himself. "Teacher Klein, you just pulled me out indiscriminately, okay?" Feeling the pain in his right hand that was like a needle prick, Jason was speechless. "If there's nothing else, Teacher Klein, I still have something to do, so I'll go back first." "No, Jason, I've been looking for you for a long time, and you have to follow me to see my instructor now." Klein is very domineering. Directly cut off Jason's idea. "Your mentor?" Jason couldn't help but be slightly startled when he heard this. A memory instantly surged from the depths of his mind. If he remembered correctly, Mr. Klein's mentor seemed to be the Sith spiritual power. The dean of the academy is Master Bispham, one of the only two fourth-level intermediate elixir masters in Talon City. For a moment, Jason couldn't help but understand what Mr. Klein wanted to do with him. After a day and night of adapting, he had fully integrated into this era and understood that the high-purity liquid he had prepared in the experimental class yesterday, the fire element basic liquid and the unique elixir preparation method will have a huge impact on the elixir masters of this era. Every man is not guilty, but he is guilty of carrying a jade. At this moment, Jason deeply understood that before he was strong enough, exposing himself too much would not only bring certain convenience to himself, but also would lead to serious consequences. How much trouble it brings to yourself. But you have to at least let me heal your hand before you go. In front of Klein, Jason raised his somewhat red, swollen, and twisted right hand. He had previously prepared a bodybuilding spirit fluid at all costs, making Jason the tendon tissue and muscle fibers of his right hand were severely damaged in a large area. At this moment, Jason's entire right arm was filled with congestion. "What's going on? Did you just say that?" It was only then that Klein noticed Jason's injured right hand, and his expression immediately softened, thinking of how Jason had endured such huge pain but seemed to be okay. Seemingly, Klein didn't know why, but he felt a little distressed. "Extend your right hand and stand still." Klein stood in front of Jason with a serious face. As she spoke, her eyes suddenly lit up, and a huge pressure that could not be described in words suddenly came from her. Teacher Klein erupted, causing Jason's breathing to become difficult in an instant. 3 green halos of light emerged from Klein's head, and finally floated behind Klein's head. The dazzling green light suddenly erupted with Teacher Klein's body as the center. Under her control, the green light only rose within 1 meter around her body, reflecting blurry light under the sunlight. Those 3 green halos are Klein's 3 spiritual rings, representing Klein's identity as a third-level spiritual master. Whispering something in her mouth, Klein's eyes suddenly burst into light, and then the outermost one of the 3 green halos suspended behind her head suddenly lit up, a huge aqua phantom. Appearing behind Klein, the phantom seemed to be a long-coiled snake. On both sides of the snake's body, there were a pair of short fleshy wings. On the head of the long snake, there was the emerald green crystal horn bones are rippling with green patterns like water waves. With Jason's eyesight as a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life, he could recognize at a glance that the long snake-like shadow that appeared above Teacher Klein's head was the phantom of the 3rd-level water spirit beast, the Qingming water demon. That was the spiritual beast that Teacher Klein obtained when he obtained the spiritual heart when he was in the 3rd level of spiritual ring. In Stern Continent, when any spiritual master reaches the next level, he can choose to continue practicing directly after promotion, or to obtain the spiritual heart of a spiritual beast. The spiritual heart is actually the spiritual core of a spiritual beast. Within an hour after the death of any spiritual beast, since the energy in the spiritual core in its body has not yet completely condensed, the spiritual cores of some spiritual beasts will be lost during that time. Appearing in a liquid form, the energy contained in it still has the vitality of life, and is not as violent as the energy in the spiritual core, so it is called spiritual heart. It's just that the absorption of the spiritual heart requires extremely powerful consciousness, and because the violent energy in the spiritual heart often causes great damage to the body of the spiritual master, when absorbing the spiritual heart, a large amount of auxiliary spiritual potions are usually required, which is not the usual. The spiritual master can obtain it. The benefits of acquiring the spiritual heart are also quite huge. In addition to greatly increasing the spiritual strength of the spiritual beast's spiritual heart, you will also directly obtain certain skills of the spiritual beast. This is better than cultivating a spiritual skill by the spiritual master himself, much more convenient, fast and powerful. Sweet rain and dew. A chant murmured from Teacher Klein's mouth. The shadow of the Qingming water demon hovering behind Teacher Klein suddenly glowed with green light. At the next moment, a dazzling green light erupted from Teacher Klein's hands. It spilled onto Jason's right arm. An indescribable cool feeling was immediately transmitted from Jason's right arm to Jason's brain. Nourished by the sweet rain skill released by Teacher Klein, Jason's right arm was visible to the naked eye. The speed resumed, and after a moment, the red and swollen blood on Jason's right arm had completely disappeared and became delicate and smooth again. He exhaled a long breath. As a third-level low-level spiritual master, Klein had just released the third-level spiritual skills for such a long time. There was already a layer of fine beads of sweat on his forehead, but when he saw, after seeing Jason's almost healed right arm, Klein's heart was also filled with joy. Now, take it, this is a coagulant. Remember to be careful in the future and don't get hurt again. Teacher knows you work hard, but don't work so hard when doing experiments. Klein took out a pink bottle from his body. The bottle of medicinal solution was stuffed into Jason's hand. I can't have it, Teacher Klein. What nonsense are you talking about? Why don't you give it to me? Klein glared at Jason again. Looking at Teacher Klein's eyes full of concern, Jason held the coagulant without saying a word. As a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life, he naturally knew the value of this bottle of 2nd-level high-grade elixir in his hand. Although this bottle the medicine is only a 2nd-level top-grade medicine, but as a therapeutic medicine, the coagulant is different from the general auxiliary medicine. It is what all spiritual masters strive for. In the market, it takes at least 2,000 to 3,000 spiritual coins to buy one bottle. Let's go, don't be stunned anymore. Looking at Jason, who didn't speak, Klein immediately walked towards the college dean's office. Neither Jason nor Klein, who were following Klein, knew that Master Bispham, the dean of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy and the only 2 4th-level intermediate elixir masters in Talon City, was preparing the medicine at this moment. The elixir is in extreme danger. In the laboratory of the dean of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, an old man wearing a navy blue robe is holding a bottle of crimson potion on the experimental table in front of him with both hands, staring at the liquid that is constantly surging in the potion bottle. Crimson potion, with a solemn expression. This old man is none other than Master Bispham, the dean of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy and one of the only 2 4th-level intermediate elixir masters in Talon City. As the dean of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, Dean Bispham has always appeared in front of the teachers and students with a gentle manner in the academy. But at this moment, if any teacher sees Bispham, he would not associate this embarrassed-looking old man with the dean who was filled with divine light in his heart. A thick drop of sweat slipped from Bispham's forehead, gathered into a thin stream on his chin, and then dripped down, but Bispham did not dare to distract himself from wiping it. Looking at the crimson potion that was constantly surging in front of him, Bispham couldn't help but feel a headache. This morning, my old friend, President Saha of the Talon City Spiritual Medicine Masters Union, hurriedly found me and said that a master of spiritual medicine came to Talon City. He actually used the physical properties of the magic medicine reaction to use lower than 2nd-level medicine. With advanced spiritual consciousness, he successfully prepared a 2nd-grade high-grade ablation agent. In order to verify the authenticity of his words, President Saha gave him a demonstration on the spot in Bispham's laboratory. Saha controlled his spiritual consciousness to a 2nd-order low-level level and prepared the ablation solution by observing the physical form changed during the process, and finally a bottle of high-quality ablation agent was successfully prepared. This result made Bispham extremely shocked. He still clearly remembered that his friend Saha had such an idea when he was only a second-level intermediate elixir practitioner. He was so cruel at the time. Made fun of him. In the elixir world, the preparation of any kind of potion requires the participation of spiritual consciousness to master it well. The strength of an elixir master's spiritual consciousness represents the strength and level of the elixir master. However, the method demonstrated by President Saha before directly subverted the tradition of the elixir world. After Saha left at noon, Bispham didn't even have lunch, so he prepared the second-grade high-grade ablation agent based on the method Saha told him. The same successful result made Bispham's heart filled with excitement. Being good at reflection, he immediately thought, since such a preparation can be achieved with ablation agents, will the results be the same with other agents? When he thought of this, Bispham could no longer suppress his heart. He couldn't wait. He happened to have a material for the violent potion on hand, and he immediately started experimenting with the violent potion. The violent potion is a third-level middle-grade spiritual potion. Any spiritual master below the fourth level can increase his strength by 1 level in a short period of time after taking the violent potion. As a fourth-level intermediate elixir master in Bispham, only the third-level intermediate violent potion is a piece of cake for him, and he is familiar with it. But what Bispham didn't expect was that in order to better observe the physical changes during the entire reaction of the violent potion, Bispham forcibly controlled his spiritual consciousness to the low level of the third level. Above. Then tragedy happened. Because his spiritual consciousness level had been lowered, the materials added by Bispham were not completely coordinated in the process of preparing the violent potion. The strong medicinal conflict caused by the different materials in the violent potion now makes the spiritual element in the potion violent, just like the huge explosion that occurred when Jason was preparing the Vulcan liquid in his previous life. If the disordered spiritual element cannot be calmed down in time, the final result will be only one, and that is an explosion. After discovering the situation, Bispham immediately used his fourth-level intermediate spiritual consciousness to constantly reconcile the spiritual elements that conflicted with the different materials in the potion bottle. However, the conflict between the materials in the violent potion was too huge. Gradually, even Bispham, a fourth-level intermediate elixir master, was unable to suppress it. That's it. He sighed slightly in his heart. Seeing that he could no longer suppress the restlessness of the elements in the potion bottle, Bispham could only admit it. With his fourth-level intermediate elixir master's strength, an explosion of this magnitude would only cause him minor injuries at most. The only regret was that his laboratory inside the college and the dean's office outside the laboratory would probably be destroyed in the explosion. When I think that tomorrow Talon City will be buzzing with news that Master Bispham, the dean of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, failed to prepare the elixir when he was preparing it, causing the laboratory and dean's office to be blown up. Bispham's head couldn't help but hurt. "Teacher, are you in there?" Just when Dean Bispham was about to give up his spiritual consciousness to suppress the violent potion, a voice suddenly came from outside the laboratory door, and then in front of Bispham, the door of the laboratory was pushed open in an instant, and a woman wearing a fiery red robe walked into the laboratory from the outside. Behind the woman, there was also a man from the college who looked to be only 17 or 18 years old. Students. These two people were Klein and Jason, who came to Bispham. "You two, get out of here right now." After seeing Klein and Jason, Bispham's originally calm expression changed instantly. Looking at the violent potion surging more violently in front of him, Bispham was filled with anxiety at the moment. He was ready to give up the suppression before, but he had already loosened his control over the spiritual elements in the violent potion. Now, even if he tried his best, at most it can only maintain the violent potion without exploding for 20 seconds, and if it exceeds 20 seconds, even Bispham will be unable to do anything. "Teacher, what are you doing?" Feeling the violent spiritual elements in the laboratory and Dean Bisfam's arrogant spiritual consciousness, Klein couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. "Why are you still stunned? Come out right away." Seeing his beloved disciple Klein still standing there, Dean Bisfam couldn't help roaring. At this moment, his heart was filled with excitement. Extremely anxious. "Yes, teacher." Feeling the anxiety in Bisfam's heart and the more violent and chaotic spiritual elements in the laboratory, Klein's expression suddenly changed. Knowing that the situation was urgent, she immediately held Jason's hand, ran towards the door of the laboratory. "It's too late." Jason broke away from Klein, who was trying to catch him, and walked towards Bisfam's location. With Jason's eyesight, he could naturally tell what was going on in the laboratory at a glance. Jason, who was a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life, could tell at a glance that Bisfam was holding the potion is a 3rd-level middle-grade violent potion, and based on the rolling extent of the violent potion in the potion bottle at this moment, Jason clearly knows that in less than 15 seconds, the potion bottle in front of him will be destroyed by the violent potion inside. The balance of spiritual elements was completely disrupted and exploded in an instant. And depending on the amount of violent medicine in the medicine bottle, not only this laboratory, but also the dean's office outside the laboratory and the circle around the dean's office will be invaded by the aftermath of the explosion and turned into ruins in the explosion. In 15 seconds, with the speed of myself and teacher Klein, it was impossible to escape from the scope of the explosion. The only result of escaping was the difference in how many pieces the body was broken into under the impact of the explosion. "What's going on with you, kid? Didn't you hear me telling you to get out? Get out of here right now." Bisfam's eyes widened with anger and he let out a roar. At this moment, he was already a little angry. At this moment, he was trying his best to overdraw his spiritual consciousness and constantly adjust the balance between the spiritual elements in the violent potion. He knew that if Klein and the boy could not leave when the explosion occurred, the two of them would the chance of surviving the explosion was less than 10%. Ignoring Bisfam's roar, Jason's eyes kept staring back and forth during Bisfam's experiment. Even at this time, there was still no trace of confusion in Jason's eyes, like a deep pool of stagnant water, calm and scary. Seeing Jason's expression, Klein couldn't help but think of yesterday afternoon's elixir experiment class. When Carrot failed to prepare the fire element basic liquid and exploded, Jason stood calmly on the outside of the explosion range. Jason's expression at that time was the same as now, so stable and extremely mature. For some reason, Klein, who was originally full of anxiety, seemed to be relieved of a lot of anxiety in an instant after seeing Jason's calm eyes. Perhaps, maybe Jason can do anything? A thought flashed through Klein's mind, and then she couldn't help but shook her head. How is it possible? A problem that even my teacher can't solve. Jason, what can he, a student, do? His thoughts were flashing in the electric light. Klein did not stop and rushed towards Jason, who was walking towards the violent potion. Today, she must kill Jason. Sun took him away from here. Even if he was dragged, he had to be dragged out. Well. At this moment, Jason's eyes suddenly lit up, and his solemn gaze instantly fell on a medicinal material in the laboratory material cabinet. They were a few ordinary-looking emerald green leaves, fan-shaped, with some irregular yellow patterns on the front of the leaves. They were quietly stored in a transparent glass instrument in the material cabinet. After seeing the emerald green leaves, Jason quickly walked up, opened the materials cabinet, and took out the leaves from the glass instrument. Damn it, what are you doing, kid? If you are okay, I will fire you. Klein, why don't you get him out of here quickly? Bisfam, who was extremely anxious in his heart, saw the man in front of him. The young man was actually taking the medicinal materials from his material cabinet slowly at this time. Bisfam was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. If I were you, I would shut my mouth, and then concentrate on suppressing the restlessness of the spiritual element in the violent potion, and buy time for others, well, people like me. Getting angry will only make things worse. Looking at Bispham, who was blowing his beard and staring at him, Jason, holding the few leaves, walked towards the violent potion in front of Bispham, and at the same time, as if he was teaching a primary school student, he was facing Bispham. Pham scolded. "You brat, how dare you teach me a lesson?" Bispham was so angry that his hair almost stood on end. After decades of living, this was the first time he had encountered such a disobedient student in front of him. At this moment, he even had some doubts as to whether the young man brought by Klein was a student in his college. Are there any students in his college who have such a bad attitude towards him? At this moment, Klein had come to Jason's side. Just when she was about to reach out and drag Jason out, Jason suddenly turned his head and said calmly to her, "Teacher Klein, if you don't want to die, you'd better not pull me." At this moment, Klein, who was facing Jason's eyes, felt an invisible force from Jason's eyes, causing her hand that she had originally stretched out to retract inexplicably the next moment. "Damn it, Klein, come behind me quickly, I can't control it anymore." At this moment, Bispham suddenly shouted, his face turned red instantly, his spiritual consciousness was crisscrossing the small laboratory, and his body was shaking uncontrollably because of overdraft. "Boy, if you don't want to die, just stand behind me." He said a few words with difficulty. At this moment, Bispham was unable to say anything more to Jason. With his eyes wide open, he used up the last bit of strength in his body. His spiritual consciousness had completely lost control of the spiritual elements in the violent potion. When he used all his strength to form a spiritual barrier in front of him, he saw Jason taking the pieces in his hand. Yeezy gently plunged into the violently boiling violent potion. Tisk, I only heard a slight chirp in my ears. In front of Bispham, the leaves in Jason's hand were all integrated into the boiling violent potion in an instant. Among the potions. Immediately, the countless violent spiritual elements that filled the entire laboratory converged in Bispham's spiritual perception in an instant and completely disappeared, as if they had never appeared before. At this moment, the spiritual elements in the entire laboratory were as calm as a blue lake with no ripples. Immediately, a very unique fragrance slowly floated out from the violent potion and reached Bispham's nose. This what is going on? Bispham released all the spiritual power in his body, preparing to withstand the huge destructive force caused by the violent potion explosion, regardless of the sudden disappearance of the violent spirit element. Feeling like he was about to vomit blood, he rushed forward and grabbed Jason, staring at Jason's face with wide eyes, as if he was looking at a monster. "What's so weird about this?" Jason looked at Bispham with a look like you were an idiot. After saying half a sentence, his eyes fell on Bispham, grabbing his collar. "Above." Sorry, I was too excited." Bispham noticed Jason's expression and hurriedly let go of his hand, not forgetting to smooth out the wrinkles he had made for Jason. He couldn't figure it out. Why did the violent potion that was about to explode earlier suddenly calm down in an instant after Jason threw in those few leaves? Actually, the reason is very simple. Jason smiled faintly. The reason why the violent potion is called the violent potion is because the elements contained in it are quite violent and active. There are 3 main materials for preparing the violent potion. Thousand knots, 3 life crystals, crazy demon blood. Thousand knots is a plant that can produce a large amount of mild spiritual energy in the human body. Its main function is to use it when violent potions take effect to produce a large amount of violent energy. The human body's spiritual veins produce a gentle spiritual power that can protect the spiritual veins. Sansei crystal and mad demon blood are 2 materials with extremely conflicting medicinal properties. However, in the case of thousands of knots, as long as the 2 of them are, the content can be maintained within a certain proportion, and the 2 of them can maintain an extremely delicate balance. At this point, Jason couldn't help but look up at Bispham in front of him. The violent potion is a technology. It is quite a mature elixir. Generally speaking, it is impossible for a 4th-level intermediate elixir master like you to get the proportion wrong. However, in the previous bottle of violent elixir, it is obvious that the blood of the crazy demon is higher than that of the three-dimensional crystal. The content is 1 ounce more. If the two materials can still remain stable when the ratio is so uncoordinated, then the only possibility is that the material you bought is fake. Hearing Jason say this, Bisfam's old face couldn't help but blush. He had previously restrained his spiritual consciousness and completely focused on the physical changes in the reaction of the violent potion. When he discovered that the proportions were out of proportion, by the time it was already too late. But what I want to know is, why did all the reactions disappear in an instant after you joined Tian Xiongyi? Bisfam looked at Jason with a trace of expectation in his eyes. How could he look like this at this time? A 4th-level intermediate elixir master who is famous in Talon City, on the contrary, looks like a primary school student who listens carefully in class. Klein on the side looked dumbfounded at Jason, who was talking eloquently, and his mentor who was listening seriously and with a serious expression. At this moment, he couldn't help feeling a little confused. She is only a 3rd-level low-level elixir master, but she has not yet fully recovered from what happened before. Well, the things involved need to be a little more in-depth. The main reason why the blood of the crazy demon and the 3-life crystal will conflict with each other is that the blood of the mad demon contains an element called the madness factor, and the 3-life crystal it contains a refreshing element that can stabilize people's minds. The two elements are absolutely mutually exclusive, but Tianxiang leaves contain an essence that can make the refreshing element ineffective in an instant, so the result is very simple. Without the opposing pure element, how could the violent potion explode? Jason, who was a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life, naturally has a very thorough understanding of the violent potion, which is only a 3rd-level mid-grade elixir. He has a deep knowledge of drugs and can explain these things as easily as a mathematics professor solving a linear equation of 2 variables to a junior high school student. So that's it. After listening to Jason's explanation, Bisfam nodded thoughtfully. At this moment, the way Bisfam looked at Jason had completely changed. Klein, why don't you introduce this master to me quickly? After listening to Jason's explanation after that, Bisfam immediately shouted to Klein, who was standing aside in a daze. In Bisfam's heart, at this moment, he has placed Jason on the same level as himself. Although the principle explained by Jason before seemed extremely simple, Bisfam, who is a 4th-level intermediate elixir master, understood deeply that he could blurt out the principles of the 3rd-level intermediate violent potion in such a simple and profound way. Even a person who understands all the pharmacological properties of the materials in the violent potion so thoroughly, how accomplished is the spiritual potion? You know, even a 4th-level intermediate elixir master like himself does not understand violent potions as thoroughly as the young man in front of him. Thinking of this, Bisfam couldn't help but want to ask, in this world, is there any justice left? Master? Klein looked at Jason aside with some depression, and said to Bisfam, Teacher, this is the Jason I told you about. Jason? Which Jason? Bisfam couldn't help being slightly stunned. It's the one who used a unique technique to prepare a high-purity fire element base liquid in yesterday's experimental class. I put that bottle of fire element base liquid on your desk last night. Hearing Bisfam's words, finally, Klein couldn't help but feel speechless at the moment. He probably just told him about Jason yesterday. He didn't expect the teacher to forget it so quickly. Oh, it's the bottle of fire element basic liquid. So, this Master Jason is a student of our academy? Bisfam looked at Jason in front of him in surprise. Based on Jason's previous performance, and his understanding of the principles of elixirs is more than enough to be a teacher in the academy, but he didn't expect that he was just a student. It's no wonder that Bisfam forgot about Jason for a while, even though Klein told him yesterday. In yesterday's experimental class, he found that a student used a unique technique to prepare a bottle without releasing spiritual consciousness. Extremely high purity fire element base fluid. Originally seeing the bottle of fire element basic liquid that he might not be able to easily prepare, Bisfam was still a little curious about the student Klein was talking about, but it was only a little curious. After all, the fire element, the basic liquid, is just the most basic potion in the preparation of elixirs. Its preparation does not even require the elixir master to reach a certain level. It only needs to reach the most basic elixir level 1, even if it is a person with strong spiritual consciousness. As long as the spiritual master understands the entire preparation steps and controls the heat of the preparation, it is possible to prepare it. Although he is a 4th-level intermediate elixir master, Bispham does not think that he is better than those at a lower level than him in the preparation of every medicine. Just like a sniper who is proficient in various firearms, his attainments in the most basic pistols may not be more accurate than a novice who has only been exposed to pistols and has only been training in pistol shooting. In Bispham's heart, this is a perfectly normal thing, so he was only slightly curious about the student Klein mentioned. After his friend Saha came this morning, he completely forgot about it. The back of the head. Jason? Jason? Hey, I seem to have heard this name somewhere before. By the way, is this Jason very famous in our college? Bispham frowned and said at Klein after saying Jason's name. Bispham couldn't help but feel familiar. He seemed to be somewhere. He heard some teachers and students mention this name, but Bispham couldn't remember what it was about. Woke up. Hearing Bispham's question, Klein couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He glanced at Jason secretly and lowered his voice and said to Bispham, "Teacher, Jason has been in the academy for 2 consecutive years. If you fail this time, you will be expelled from the college." Ah? Does our college still have this rule? Oh, yes, it seems that there is such a rule. Rain looked at Bispham, who was standing there recalling the rules of the college with a dark look on his face. Although he was the dean of the college, he was mainly focused on the study of elixirs and rarely interfered with the affairs of the college, but it's not that big of a deal. As the dean of the college, he doesn't even know the rules of the college. What this dean did is too creative. What, you said he was about to be persuaded to quit? How is that possible? No, absolutely not. Let me see who dares to persuade him to quit. Bispham finally recalled the court rules and then realized what Klein was. The meaning of what he said before. His face changed in vain in an instant. Bispham suddenly jumped up and ran in front of Jason. "Master Jason, don't worry, you can go to school in the academy, you can study as long as you want, you can fail as many times as you want, you can be as rampant as you want, and I, an old man, want to see who dares to persuade you to leave my college." Ahem, even if Jason had 2 souls, he couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed when facing Bispham at this moment. He coughed twice and deliberately pretended to be confused. "Hey, by the way, I didn't know who said it before. He said that if I was fine, he would fire me." "Ah, there is actually this person?" Bispham said with a serious face, staring and blowing his beard. "It's so outrageous, it's so outrageous. If I know who said this, I will humiliate him severely and then expel him. It is simply too outrageous." "Teacher." Bai looked at Bai, who turned his face faster than flipping through the book. Instructor Svam. Klein's face was red with grief and anger. "Jason has advanced in the spiritual power test this morning. He passed the spiritual power test." "Haha, that's good, that's good. Let me just say, how can a person as powerful as Master Jason be persuaded to quit? He is actually just hiding his strength." "Klein, do you see it? You have to learn from Master Jason, and you must not be too ostentatious, don't you think so, Master Jason?" Seeing the smile on Bispham's face in front of Jason, at this moment, Klein felt like wanting to go, the urge to die. "It's so shameful, it's so shameful." "Well, Master Jason, you said earlier that there is some kind of violent factor in the blood of the mad demon, so is there any good way to solve this problem?" Bispham asked Jason with a flattering smile. "Well, this is available, but it's a bit difficult. For example, we can use ignoring Klein standing aside." Jason and Bispham were like 2 old friends who hadn't seen each other for a long time, and they started discussing it without thinking about anything. In front of Jason, Bispham completely forgot that Jason was just a 17-year-old boy. He did not regard Jason as a student of his academy, but as a person who was qualified to compete with Jason. The master of pharmacy who studies with him, and even the teacher who can give him guidance in some aspects. Klein on the side just stood and listened for a short while. With her attainments in elixir science, she was completely unable to keep up with the two people's thinking. The reason why she brought Jason here today was just because she was curious about Jason's method when he prepared the fire element basic liquid yesterday. She wanted her instructor to take a look at it. If possible, she would ask her teacher to give some guidance to Jason, but the result would develop, but it was completely beyond Klein's expectation. Looking at teacher Bispham, who was discussing seriously and listening humbly, Klein felt a little confused. Is this really teacher Bispham? What Klein didn't know was that his teacher Bispham's talent in elixir science was actually not very high, but the reason why he was able to reach the 4th level intermediate elixir master and become the 2 most powerful people in Talon City was one of the famous spiritual medicine masters, which has a lot to do with his character of not being ashamed to ask questions if he doesn't understand, regardless of the other person's identity. This kind of character of his is destined to be an extraordinary elixir master, and his progress in elixir science will definitely not stop here. When Jason came out of the dean's office of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, the entire academy was already a little hazy under the dusky night. The path paved with stones in the academy was illuminated by the magic lamps beside the road. A kind of dreamy and blurred color. He touched his overstuffed belly and waved to Dean Bispham, who had been sending him to the door of the dean's office. Faced with the extremely enthusiastic Dean Bispham, Jason's heart was filled with excitement. Can't stand it. In the afternoon, Jason had been chatting with Dean Bispham about the pharmacology of Chinese medicines and materials in spiritual medicine. Seeing that it was getting late outside, Bispham kindly invited Jason to have dinner and said Jean Klein prepared a sumptuous dinner. After dinner, Dean Bispham reluctantly invited Jason to continue the discussion. Judging from this attitude, he was very motivated to stay up all night. If Jason hadn't repeatedly excused himself and said that there was something urgent at night, I am afraid that Dean Bispham would have to keep him here for a long time. In fact, in the discussion between the two in the afternoon, Jason's explanations accounted for most of the main part. However, Jason also learned a lot of knowledge that he had never known before from Dean Bispham, which can be said to have benefited a lot. Shallow. In this world, if one compares his attainments in the spiritual medicine technology stream, no one in the past or in the present is more powerful than Jason, who founded the spiritual medicine technology stream 3,000 years later, and if in terms of understanding the pharmacological aspects of elixirs and materials used in elixirs, no one in this era has a better understanding than Jason, who has perfected the knowledge of elixirs for more than 3,000 years. But if it is more about using spiritual consciousness to prepare elixirs, in this era, any official elixir master can become Jason's teacher. Jason in later generations will become a 9th level elixir master with his achievements in using elixir science techniques. When he was a medicine master, his spiritual consciousness level was only level 5 of elixir, and he had not even reached the 1st level of elixir disciple. In his previous life, Jason was so untalented in spiritual knowledge that even though he was surrounded by so many powerful elixir masters, Jason did not learn much from them about the use of spiritual knowledge in the preparation of spiritual potions. Therefore, in this aspect, the current Jason can be said to be completely blank. In this life, with the gift of spiritual consciousness, what he has to learn from others is the knowledge about the use of spiritual consciousness in the preparation of spiritual potions. Jason, who didn't pause along the way, basically spent no time before returning to his dormitory. Jason's roommate Carrot hadn't come back yet. The entire dormitory was empty, and it seemed extremely quiet in the silent night. In the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, there are no restrictions on freedom for students like Carrot and Xiaobo who have reached the 9th level of spiritual power or the 9th level of elixir. They only need to do it once a week in the academy. Just register. If they need to leave the college for a period of time, they can also ask for leave from the college. Basically, they can get it. The same cannot be said for students like Jason. They need to study various courses and have something to do every day, and every once in a while, various subjects are also assessed, which can be said to be quite strict. After Jason came back, he tidied up the dormitory a little and filled the wooden bucket in the bathroom with water. Immediately, Jason took out the bodybuilding spirit liquid that he had prepared in the private laboratory of the college during the day, and gently uncorked the bottle. A violent energy fluctuation suddenly erupted from the crimson potion bottle in Jason's hand. The sound came out and filled the entire bathroom in the dormitory. A look of anticipation flashed across his eyes. Jason's right hand shook slightly, and a drop of red bodybuilding liquid dripped from the potion bottle in Jason's hand into the clear water in the barrel. In a moment, the extremely clear water in the barrel turned completely red under the influence of that drop of bodybuilding spirit liquid. Putting away the remaining bodybuilding spirit liquid, Jason leaned forward, with a hint of indifference in his expression, and gently sat cross-legged in the barrel. After forming a seal with his hands on his abdomen, Jason Mori exhaled a long breath, closed his eyes slightly, and the 6th level spiritual power in his body began to operate at high speed in an instant. Jason, who was running the 6th level spiritual power in his body, did not do the usual practice of absorbing external spiritual power and condensing the external spiritual power into the meridians in his body to increase the content of spiritual power in his body. Instead, he used the spiritual power in his 6th level meridians to the light white spiritual energy flow poured back into the 5th level meridians. After all, the 6th level spiritual power is one level more powerful than the 5th level spiritual power. When all the 6th level spiritual power entered Jason's 5th level meridians, Jason suddenly felt a strong stabbing force coming from the 5th level meridians. Pain, the entire 5th level meridians are filled with 6th level spiritual power that has been compressed to the extreme. A thin layer of sweat suddenly seeped out from Jason's forehead. Jason frowned. He poured the 6th level spiritual power into the 5th level meridians without stopping. Instead, he poured the extremely thick spiritual power into use all your strength and pour it into the 4th level meridians. Bang! There seemed to be a sound of something breaking in his ears. Jason, who was sitting quietly in the barrel, suddenly trembled all over. The corners of his mouth pulled out in a violent arc, and there was a clenching of teeth. There were bursts of creaking sounds and bursts of burning and severe pain, like devouring ants, crisscrossing Jason's heart and burrowing straight into Jason's heart. Jason, who was constantly sensing the situation in his body with his spiritual sense, clearly felt that the entrance to the 4th level meridians was torn and damaged immediately under the impact of the 6th level spiritual power. A heavy cold sweat flowed across Jason's forehead, and Jason took several breaths of cold air. The pain of broken meridians did not bring much hesitation to his face, but instead added a touch of perseverance, which showed on his face. What came out was a young man with a strong determination to become strong. Gritting his teeth, Jason exhaled a long and trembling breath. Under his crazy urging, the 6th level spiritual power in his body once again charged towards the depths of the 4th level meridians, like a fierce tiger. Keep moving forward. Pa, the 4th level meridians in Jason's body, which were not thick but rather weak, were destroyed by the vertical and horizontal force of the 6th level spiritual power. Everywhere they touched, they exploded and shattered. Waves of painful groans came from Jason's mouth, and a trace of blood slowly slipped from the corner of Jason's mouth and splashed into the barrel. Just when Jason's body felt weak and his strong will kept him from passing out, traces of red air flow seeped into Jason's body from the barrel, happily reaching Jason's broken 4th level. The location of the meridians. Wherever he went, bursts of warmth filled Jason's mind, and the broken 4th level meridians were repaired at a speed visible to the naked eye under the lingering red air flow. In Jason's perception, those repaired compared with the original 4th level meridians, the subsequent 4th level meridians are obviously thicker, and the strength of the veins has also become tougher. In this way, the 6th level spiritual power in Jason's body, after running through the 4th level meridians, came to the entrance of the 3rd level meridians. Trembling, Jason gritted his teeth and used the 6th level spiritual power that had been raging through the 4th level meridians for a circle, and once again violently impacted the entrance of the 3rd level meridians in the early morning. Warm sunlight shines through the gaps in the windows, forming scattered white spots under the cut of the square window panes, illuminating the clean and quiet room. In the wooden barrel in the bathroom of the dormitory, a young man with a warm light shining on his face was sitting there with his eyes closed and his breathing steady, motionless. In the wooden barrel, there was some clear water, with a very light reddish color emerging. As it swayed, it projected a strange light, which was quite magical. Taking a long breath from his mouth, the boy's eyes suddenly opened in an instant. A strange red light flashed through the boy's eyes, leaving only his extremely clear pupils. Feeling the abundant spiritual power in his body and the strong body that he could feel with every movement of his hands and feet, the young man couldn't help but reveal a warm smile. That smile from the heart actually made the dazzling sunlight outside the room shine in this moment. I couldn't help but feel a little sad for a moment. Crash! A clear sound of water came from the barrel, and the boy did not see any movement. A phantom passed by, and the naked boy flew out of the barrel. With a sudden tremor, water droplets splashed everywhere, letting the cold water droplets splash down in the room, reflecting blurred light. Without any wiping, the boy's body became extremely dry during the shaking. After a night of hard training, not only did Jason's face not look tired at all, but he became extremely energetic, giving people a feeling of high spirits. Casually putting on a piece of dry and clean clothes, Jason stretched lazily and felt the extremely filling light white airflow in his meridians. He couldn't help but murmured in a low voice, "According to this progress, I'm afraid it won't take more than 2 days to advance again." Although Jason succeeded in attacking the 6th level of spiritual power last time, the strength of the light white spiritual energy flow in the 6th level meridians has the hope of reaching the 7th level, but he knows how to step by step. He was still preparing to consolidate the spiritual power in the 6th level meridians before launching the next stage of impact. In Jason's original imagination, it would take him at least a month to consolidate the spiritual power in all his meridians. But after practicing all night last night, Jason discovered that the bodybuilding spiritual fluid refined using the spiritual core of the 2nd level Fierce Tiger Beast King as the main material and adding the Tianqin Emperor fruit was better than what he had refined in his previous life. The effect of the bodybuilding spirit liquid was so powerful that not only the damaged meridians in his body were repaired intact overnight, but the remaining energy in the bodybuilding spirit liquid made Jason's body reach the 1st level. The 6th level meridians are all filled with the 6th level light white spiritual power. Under normal circumstances, after an ordinary person reaches the 6th level of spiritual power, only the 6th level spiritual power runs in the 6th level meridians, and the meridians of levels 1 to 5 cannot withstand the powerful force of the 6th level spiritual power. Energy. But in Jason's body at this moment, the meridians at each level from level 1 to level 6 are constantly running level 6 spiritual power, absorbing the spiritual elements in the outside air. After a night of strengthening, the meridians at level 1 to level 5 are enough to withstanding the operation of a certain amount of 6th level spiritual power. This kind of spiritual power cultivation speed and spiritual element condensation speed are several times faster than that of ordinary spiritual masters, and the amount of 6th level spiritual power in Jason's body is also much faster. Several times more than the average person with level 6 spiritual power. If he continues to practice at this speed, Jason is sure that it won't be long before he can hit the 7th level of spiritual power. After tidying up the bathroom a little, he looked at Jason, who saw that it was almost time, then walked out of the room and walked outside the academy. In Jason's training plan, the bodybuilding spirit liquid is only a part of the practice. In addition to using spiritual power to impact the meridians every night and letting the bodybuilding spirit liquid repair it, Jason also needs to purchase some props and materials. Perform strengthening exercises on your own body. If you want to temper your body, the simplest way is to exercise it all the time. Many people tie some heavy objects to their bodies to promote muscle growth and improve muscle quality. intensity for exercising. But Jason, who was a 9th-level elixir master in his previous life, would naturally not use such low-level methods. Partially exercising the muscles of the body would improve the strength of the body. At the same time, due to the uncoordinated growth of the body parts, it will cause some damage to the body. What Jason does is to put every part of his body under high-magnitude gravity pressure at all times in order to achieve the purpose of tempering his body. Now he just wants to go out and buy some materials to create a spiritual pendant that can release the gravity space. Hey, isn't this our famous celebrity Jason? What? Haven't you been expelled from the college yet? Just when Jason was thinking about how to obtain those materials and where to build them, a slightly frivolous voice suddenly came into Jason's ears, interrupting Jason's train of thought. In front of Jason, a young man about Jason's age, with a somewhat arrogant appearance, was raising his head and looking at Jason with a hint of frivolity in his eyes. Beside the young man, stood a man wearing a pink robe, a girl with long blonde hair and sapphire blue eyes. Her fair skin, under the early morning sun, has a touch of illusion, giving people a sacred feeling. After seeing the young man, Jason's body trembled involuntarily for an instant, and a memory emerged from the depths of Jason's mind. The girl in front of Jason at this moment, named Lucy, was Jason's girlfriend in this body. At that time, Jason was known as a genius boy. He was very high-spirited in the academy and was very popular among the girls in the academy. In the crowd, Jason fell in love with Lucy, a beautiful girl, at a glance. At that time, the Kate in front of Jason was also pursuing Lucy, but in the end Lucy chose Jason. But no one expected that Jason, who was known as a genius boy, actually made no progress in 2 consecutive years after reaching the 5th level of spiritual power, and was called the #1 loser of the 6th Spiritual Power Academy by everyone. After failing the assessment again and again, Lucy was also disappointed with Jason. Kate, who had reached the 8th level of spiritual power, immediately seized the opportunity and took Lucy away from Kate. His eyes took a deep look at Lucy in front of him. In his previous life, Jason was a 9th-level elixir master. What kind of woman has he not seen? He wanted to see what kind of girl could make him. The uncontrollable shaking of the body made the original owner of this body love him so deeply. After feeling Jason's burning gaze, Lucy couldn't help but lower her head slightly. A trace of guilt rose from the bottom of her heart, and then disappeared without a trace in an instant. Who kept you from being promoted for so long, woman? The one who needs to be followed is a strong person, not a useless person who is laughed at. Lucy raised her head, her eyes were full of matter-of-factness, and she held Kate's arm tightly. To her surprise, Lucy did not feel any blame or pain from Jason's eyes. Jason's eyes were as calm as a deep lake with no bottom. Is this woman? Is it also very ordinary? Jason, who had seen countless peerless beauties in his previous life, shook his head slightly. Although the young girl in front of him was beautiful, in Jason's heart, compared with the famous mainland beauties and imperial princesses in his previous life, she was also very beautiful. Ordinary? Thinking of this and ignoring Kate's words, Jason stepped out of the academy. Now he had no time to waste time on such boring things. Who told you to leave? Trash. Seeing that Jason ignored her, Kate, who was originally prepared to humiliate Jason, felt unhappy. She took a step forward and stopped in front of Jason. Seeing the body in front of him, Jason frowned slightly, and his cold eyes fell on Kate's extremely disgusting face in the next moment.